There was no warning for this ban on women attending university, was there? So how surprising was this step by the Taliban?
Well, actually, you cannot imagine how it feels unless you have been a girl who grew up in Afghanistan. I was devastated by the announcement, not because it was unexpected of Taliban, but because I cannot picture how the next policy, how the next restriction would look like for women in Afghanistan. Since the day Taliban stepped into power in Afghanistan, the only thing they have been focusing on was how to further suppression, how to further restriction on women. And as you see, the country is on the verge of starvation. We lose children every day to malnutrition, and the population is in desperate need of public services that authorities should provide. And while Taliban, the only ideology they have today and the only thing they're focusing on is how to spread their misogynistic ideology by just restricting women from their very basic rights. And you cannot imagine how dire the situation is, the starvation, the depression, the suffocation. It's reaching to a breaking point, especially for women. And
Well, yes. Apologies, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was only going to mention the fact that there were restrictions already on women in universities, weren't there? They were only allowed to study certain subjects, they had different entrances, they were only allowed to be taught by women or some older men, for example. Have you been able to speak to anybody there and get some reaction to those who found that they have their university careers ended?
Well, I've been in contact with most university students, female university students in Afghanistan, because I've tried to mobilize forces both in Afghanistan and outside in order to preserve the spaces that we have already got in Afghanistan, which included university level education for women. And the day when I was interviewing some of the students for this initiative, which I cannot mention for safety and security reasons, we have heard about the announcement, and a lot of students who were on the verge of graduation, a lot of students who were just hoping, just keeping up with the little space they have got, they were completely devastated. I heard from my classmates, because I couldn't finish my studies and I left Afghanistan, some of my classmates who were back in Afghanistan, they were telling me that when universities opened, they were going back to their classes, but it looked like a funeral. Everybody was wearing black, and it seemed like even the trees and the ground, they were decaying. And the whole situation was quite suffocating, slowly shrinking for women, but they were keeping up with it. They were still going with all their heart and all their passion, because they knew what the alternative would look like. But the announcement, it came at a time when girls have been already banned from attending high school for over a year now. And the fact that we still see the world, it is standing by and just watching and waiting for the Taliban's behavior to change with sanctions that starve and punish civilians. It is absurd. It is not something that could ever change the situation of women in Afghanistan.
Well, yes, what would you like to see happen? Clearly, this step has been condemned by the UN, it's been condemned by countries around the world, but what would you like the international community to do now?
The fact that I want people to realize is that for countries like Afghanistan, education is not any right. It's a necessity, like breathing oxygen. And education crisis is emergency. And if international community do not join forces right now with big, powerful institutions, if they do not take a stance right now, we might lose the only educated generation that we have got in the country. That is the only hope for Afghanistan. Because I think you cannot be neutral in this situation. Education is political, women is political in Afghanistan. And if the UN and big institutions, if they do not take a stance, and if they, in the sake of political correctness or neutrality, if they remain silent and just rely on empty words and condemnations, then they are equally responsible for the state of women in Afghanistan, like Taliban.
OK, well, Aisha Khurram, thanks very much indeed for giving us your time and your reaction to that ban of women in Afghanistan from university. We appreciate your time. Thank you.